Hey, welcome everybody to another Relax with Rise. Uh, Today is Emma and I. We're going to be talking about a little bit about our journey into this life of passive income and what it took to get there, and where we're going from here, and how things are not always as they seem, and the lessons that we've learned along the way here. So, if you want to give them our disclaimer, Emma.
Yeah, that's the fun part. We're not financial advisors. We are not lawyers. We are not accountants. And even if we were financial advisors, lawyers, or accountants, we're not your financial advisor, lawyer, or accountant. So we're just sharing our story, our experiences with financial freedom, with the lifestyle changes that come along with some of the decisions that we made to not only get there, but what we're doing since, how we're paying the bills, how we left a steady W 2 paycheck and career, and how we're making that work. And just all of the things that have just recently happened and the things that are coming up to be happening. Some of them good, some of them not so good. So just sharing the good, the bad, the ugly. And also, we share these a lot. If you want to take a look at my podcast at Passive Income Adventures, and check out the stories that we tell and the stories that other people who are going through the same things, the stories that they're telling as they go through their journey to financial freedom and passive income. So we're just going to be sharing a little bit about our story today. All right. So, first thing we're going to start with is the updates that we just recently had about 2 years ago with Troy's layoff, um, how it was different than our previous layoffs, and what he's discovered during that time being now an investor and now an entrepreneur. I've actually never had a W 2 job. So I was a stay at home mom, and I was frequently like a 1099 employee or a Schedule C self employed solopreneur. So that's been my personal experience with the job market. And so Troy, because he spent many years in corporate America and with small startups, I feel like you just have more insight into the differences between these things. That would love to get your input on your experiences there, like the pros and the cons of each of these roles that you've been playing over the last several years.
Yeah, definitely. So, I I think it was 20 years ago, I started out in the IT world and was working with startup companies down in Austin, Texas, doing data science startups. And I knew the owners pretty closely, the founders of the businesses, and got to work with them very closely and to kind of understand the struggles that they had starting their own businesses. As a W-2 employee, I was really limited on my exposure to that business side of things. And I'm typically an operator is what they would call me, where I focus on the task that I'm doing, do it to the best of my ability, and work on trying to grow the company kind of from the back, behind the scenes, I guess you could say. And the struggle that I had with that I didn't really realize until later on in my career, one was that when you're in a startup company, you end up having not a very stable income, because you end up moving from company to company as they grow, as they get bought out, and as they transition to larger companies. And so one thing that I began to realize is that I felt like that there was something missing in my life, and I couldn't really put my finger on it. It wasn't until my last time that I got laid off that I realized it was that I wasn't having enough interaction with people. Working in the background, I didn't see my product that we were developing, didn't really see the impact that it was having on people's lives. And that was very difficult for me, because I wanted to talk to the people, I wanted to see the people, I wanted to see them succeeding with the efforts that I was putting in order to try and help them do that. And it wasn't until after that last layoff, and I decided that there was something missing and I needed to identify what that was, that once I identified that, it changed my whole outlook on my life and on what the future of my life would be. I didn't want to be at the laying on my deathbed and thinking about all the time that I miss spending with my family and my kids, and interactions having with real people and exploring the world, and being able to say, yeah, I sat behind a computer for all my life and I can't see beyond the monitor. So I was really excited to enter the entrepreneurial field. And my wife, she had been working on, she'd been doing real estate for quite a while, and had started working on building this business of connecting people, trying to help them with the same problem, or one of the same things we noticed as transitioning from W-2 to W-2 was that if you're fully dependent on a W-2 job, you are fully dependent on that person that is paying you for your livelihood. And as soon as they just stop paying you, then you realize that you don't have any other source, and you begin scrambling. And there's a lot of fear and anxiety there that is underlying for any W-2 employee that doesn't have another source of income that they can fall back on it when they do transition there. So not only does having another source of income help give you more security in your job, but it also makes your job a lot more fun, because you know you don't have to be there in order to provide for your family. And so that was one of the other big incentives that Emma had for starting this real estate business, and getting to understand the real estate industry a lot more. Looking at the different options that she could have gone into, the real estate seemed to be the most lucrative and promising for future growth and stability. And so I believe that's the reason that she focused on that. And as with any entrepreneurial venture that you end up going into, as me as an operator, I don't really understand all the nuances of marketing and sales and I guess higher level management with a bigger picture, like what a CEO will do. And so when a lot of people start into the entrepreneurial field, they'll forget that there's an entire infrastructure that was supporting them doing their job in the industry that they were in. And they tend to forget that it's not as easy as just quitting and continuing to do what you're doing and growing a business from scratch. And so there's that anxiety there. But what an investment allows you to do is you can find your own deals. You can decide where you're spending your money. You can decide where your efforts are going into. You can decide how much return you want to have. You can, I mean, as you educate yourself in the like real estate investing and investing in general, it gives you a lot more ability to be able to control your own finances, and gives you that security. And you don't necessarily need to have an entire company backing you in that, though. As you do, one thing that we've definitely discovered in real estate is that it's all about networking and trying to help other people become successful as you become successful. And as you do so, other people will look for opportunities to provide you with opportunities to succeed. And all you have to do is just reach out and grab those. And so that's probably the biggest lessons I've learned in switching from a W-2 to investing into going to and becoming an entrepreneur, is that understanding what my own limitations are, understanding what my desires are and what's going to make me want to get up in the morning, and then understanding the challenges that I will be facing in there. And then probably the last thing in particular would be keeping a positive attitude and believing that you can achieve that, and breaking your goals up into manageable chunks so that you feel like you're continually making progress towards that end. Have you found that to be true in your starting your own business, Emma?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I identify more when you're doing like the cash flow quadrant, all four things. You got your employee in one box, your solo operator, your business owner, larger business owner, and then being an investor. And I really identify with the solopreneur and the investor side of things, and learning how to think a little bit bigger, think in systems, think in specialization, by having a team now at Rise Capital so that we can basically have people working in their areas of expertise, which I had done at smaller businesses, like as a 1099 contractor. Really got to kind of like drill into my specialty. But in my own solo business, I had to do everything. I had to wear all the hats. And there were things that I was good at. There were things I wasn't good at. And there were things that I could do, but I hated doing it. And I never felt like the business like had enough revenue to farm out some of those jobs because I didn't want to grow, because I didn't want to deal with booking and customer service and sales and all of those things to grow. So I just stayed in my comfortable little box and just saved up money and tried to invest it. I've never really wanted to be a large business owner. And but boy, I sure love being an investor. I mean, it's basically looking at the way I ran a business as a solopreneur and the things that would fall through the cracks, and know that people who are really good at business management wouldn't be letting those kinds of things happen. And so it became actually a pleasure for me to meet people who are running great businesses from an admin, like you said, an operator standpoint, but also from having a great product kind of standpoint, and then putting my money in there to let my money work. And just taking pleasure in watching a business that's well run, even though I mean, I know, you know, from being in so many companies, like there's always a mess behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
So I know that. But at the same time, it's like, are they focusing on the important stuff? Like, what do we always say in investors? When am I getting paid and how much is it going to be? That's all we really care about, right? But then underneath,
Mhm.
that's not actually true, because we want it to be legal, ethical, right? And to
Right.
be done in an organized fashion to maximize efficiencies, tax savings, things like that. And so for me, like watching from those different quadrants, never having been an employee, but watching from those other ones, has been really, really interesting. Um, and just learning how to trust that there are business owners out there that are better at running businesses than I am. Either they're better at just the actual operations, or they're finding product that I'm not specializing in. Like maybe like when we were looking for a lot of multifamily and buying a lot of multifamily properties, um, I would do private loans, but I wasn't gonna find those and evaluate those and service those. Like, so I had to find somebody else, Chris, to invest with, so he could do the private loans on my behalf or loan money out to flippers rather than just trying to run my own private um, lending business. So it's not just a matter of like being good at organizing or operating a business. It's also just really specializing in a product. And so
Mhm.
that's kind of, I guess that kind of brings us into the next thing that I wanted to bring up, which was the difference between how we're making our investor decisions between cash flow, equity, and how tax planning comes into that. Because you leave that cushy W-2 paycheck and suddenly your income becomes very irregular. We have all heard the Dave Ramsey radio show where they call up and they say, I have a regular income. And he walks them through how to budget, to make a budget, and then when money comes in, you're allocating it. So there are ways to deal with an irregular income, and we were aware of that. But it's just nothing compared to the reality of not knowing if you're going to get paid again. And if you have an asset that you can sell, like say our rental houses that we can sell without having to, there are partnership agreements to sell a multifamily, right? But in our own rental houses, it's completely up to us. And so just saying, like, if we sell this rental house, are we killing the golden goose? Because you're basically trading the cash flow from the rental to the chunk of cash that you get on a sale. And we couldn't refinance most of them because when interest rates went up, the values have gone up so high because we were buying in high appreciation areas, that if we pulled cash out on a refinance, we would have had a much higher payment and the rents had not kept up. So our return on equity was terrible. People are always like, well, why would you sell it? Why wouldn't you just refinance it? Well, the new loan products and that return on equity calculation factored into it very heavily. If your return on equity, which is basically the cash flow from the year divided by how much cash you have invested in it, I think some of our properties are less than 1%. And usually under 10%, you're like, okay, we need to start looking at selling this, certainly under 5%. And then some of them were ticking time bombs as far as the maintenance went. Like, I know this thing is going to need a new roof, or I know that the wiring is not up to code. So one house, we got the code up to wiring and immediately, I mean, we got the wiring up to code and immediately sold it, because I feel like there are just certain ticking time bomb issues of maintenance on some of the older homes that we had that we didn't want to keep. So we started selling houses, and then we had to figure out, okay, so we just got a big chunk of cash. What are we going to do with it? Because a big chunk of cash will run out eventually. Like, it wasn't a big enough chunk that we could be like, we can literally put this in our savings account and just live off that for the rest of our lives. It's the same concept with compounding. If you have enough money invested, then you don't need to worry about killing that golden goose because it's over here working. And if you have $5 invested, right, you're not really going to get enough cash flow off of that to be able to live on. And so how much is enough? Is it $10? Is it $100,000? Is it $1 million? Is it $2 million? So for us, we decided it was somewhere in the $2 million range, because we can pretty reliably get a 10% rate of return on our portfolio. And with about $2 million, we could live on that very well. So we started working up, okay, we're going to sell stuff and then we're going to redeploy it to things that are more passive so we don't have to worry about it. And then what we can do is worry just about our business, which is running our fund. That was one of the things, like when I wanted to start doing more private lending, because that's where the cash flow is. You're making 10, sometimes 12% on your money. And I needed to be able to put my money with somebody else who was going to lend it out on my behalf. And because I just, like I said, that's like its own business almost. Even if you're just lending out your own cash, it's almost like its own business. And so I needed a fund where they would direct that for me. And so when I met Chris and he was doing a lot of private lending, I couldn't legally just give him my money and say, go lend this out for me. There are just laws about becoming a lender. There are laws about raising capital from the people around you. So we decided to start a fund together so that we could aggregate lots of people's cash, go out and do the private lending, because cash flow was our number one priority at that point. Another thing was preservation of capital, because once you hit that $2-ish million type of nest egg size, then what you're able to do is to really reduce the risk that you have there and be able to say, okay, I don't need to be making like crazy returns on this money because I can do something really safe. And so that was for us, that we were able to say, hey, we can really downgrade our risk profile from private equity over to private debt, because who gets paid first? The first lien from the bank gets paid first. And then the second lien holder, meaning a second mortgage or, second lien on it, gets paid second. And then who gets paid? Anybody who has preferred equity, somebody who brings in a big fat check, gets paid next, because they've negotiated that for themselves by bringing a lot of money. But where we were in either common equity, meaning that we were limited partners getting common equity, we got paid after the lender, after the second lien, after the preferred equity. We're paid here. And then as a general partner, which is where we were on a lot of we were the managers, we got paid even after the common equity. And so I feel like for us, we're just looking at where we were getting paid on the stack. We were GP, general partner. We're getting paid last, which is the riskiest place to be, because everybody comes in priority above you. And we were thinking, okay, our private lending that we're doing down here, we're getting paid first. And so reducing that amount of risk and taking the commensurate less return. So instead of making 15, 20, 25% on deals where we were managers, we're now making 10 to 12. But we knew we only needed to make 10 in order to get that $2 million cash flowing where we needed to be. So just sitting and thinking about our goals, that was a major shift of attitude for us, to be thinking about getting paid in that way instead of just getting your paycheck every 2 weeks. Start figuring out, like, how are we going to move things and where are we going to put them? And we never really saw that coming, because when we were amassing net worth, buying these apartment buildings and buying houses that are appreciating, we were thinking, okay, we're going to sell these, we're going to have money, and then it'll be our $2 million, and then we can just live off of it. But then we had to figure out, where's the 10% coming from? Like, who are we going to invest it with? What are we going to do? So just I just guess I never really saw that coming, that apartments really wouldn't cash flow that well, and that they were riskier because I was getting paid either common equity or GP equity, and just really having to stop and think, like, this is a different place for us to be. That was really tough. And we still like equity, but the reason why we like equity, it is definitely higher risk. It should be higher return. Well, over the last 2 years, where the equity has not been performing. It hasn't been paying distributions. One of the properties that we invested in was actually foreclosed, and all the investors lost 100% of their capital. That's a scarring thing to have happen, and we never saw that coming. It was in a neighborhood that we knew really well in Austin, and so I felt comfortable investing there because we'd lived there for so long, and I thought it was a great area and up and coming and good property, and it foreclosed. And how long does it take to recover from a negative growth rate to make up for the 25% you got on the property that did well the year before? And I started to think, like, I knew that that 10% rate was going to be an average between properties that did well and properties that did poorly. And I said, well, why don't we just do 10%, 10 to 12%, like pretty reliably? That cash flow is better. We're not sitting around waiting for a distribution that might not show up. We are getting paid either monthly or at the end of each loan that's going out, so we can stagger those. It just didn't really make sense for us when the equity properties stopped performing. And when things pick up in the next couple of years, we'll probably do some more equity. But when things are slow like this, it's like, it's really important to think about where your risk profile is and who's keeping your lights on. Like, we didn't have a W-2 to say, well, whatever, we'll just take it. We still have really good jobs. We'll earn it back. We really had to think, like, where is this going? It's still a little bit emotional for me. That was a really tough experience. And again, a life event like that we did not see coming. And it really set us back. So it really changed the way that we looked at cash flow. It changed the way we looked at our money. It changed the way we looked at wealth building, and being happy with the $2 million earning 10%. That's a foundational level. If we make more than that, we might be able to invest it in something a little crazier, a little riskier, but there's this foundation level that needs to be sacrosanct. Like, you don't mess with it. You have this amount of money, for us, like $2 million that you are earning great cash flow on, that you can live a decent lifestyle. And then anything above and beyond that, you can get creative with. Another way that we make that money stretch, and we don't have a lot of this $2 million is still in the form of equity in apartments that's not paying us. And so we knew that we'd have to cut back our lifestyle for a while some of those properties were waiting to be sold, or if they even sold for what we were hoping they would sell for, and the equity would actually be realized. And so we cut way back. And one of the ways we did that was to think more about, like, our tax planning and getting ahead of how we're doing. So we have enough equity to give us depreciation so that we don't have to pay taxes. We're both real estate professionals. Any of the active income that we make off of the interest, we don't have to pay taxes on, because we have enough depreciation on the equity investments to offset that active income from the interest income. And that's something that's really important to consider when you're thinking about doing private lending. It makes more sense for people who still have steady jobs to be doing private lending in their retirement accounts, especially as you get older and you want to start rebalancing. It's like a stocks versus bonds. Like, bonds are safer than stocks. And so as you get older and closer to retirement, you're going to put more bonds in your portfolio and start reducing the ratio to stocks. It's the same thing with equity versus debt. A debt is basically a bond, and it's a bond that's issued more like a bank or a private individual, whereas a bond is issued by a company or some municipality, a government agency. But it's basically the same thing. It's a loan. And so as bonds are less risky than stocks, loans are less risky than equity in the same way. So we started really prioritizing those lower risk cash flowing things, just the same way you would rebalance a stock portfolio. So if you're getting closer to retirement, you want to lower the risk and you want to increase the cash flow. Doing it inside your retirement fund is really nice, because that's already tax advantaged. And if you do it correctly, you won't be taxed on any of the growth that comes out of that portfolio. So that's what a lot of our investors are doing through their retirement funds, especially in their mid 50s to maybe late 50s. And they're starting to actually live on that, are able to take distributions from that retirement account and start to live on that. And so that for us was a major shift in thinking, that we could use our taxes, our tax planning, as an extra stream of income to augment our cash flow. Because the less you're paying in taxes, because we're self-employed and we're not at the end of the year, you just get a tax bill, right? Or there's those quarterly withholdings, depending on how you structure your business. And so that's money out of our pockets when we have to pay that out. We don't have any withholdings from a W-2. And so we really have to plan ahead to be able to pay that tax bill. And if we're paying less taxes or paying no taxes or even getting a tax refund, then that is a stream of cash flow for us to kind of supplement what we're doing. So be thinking about like, how much debt do I want, because it's not tax advantage, versus equity do I want that is tax advantage. So that, again, was a major shift for us, because we have never really had to worry about where the money was coming from before. It's like, it's super, super steady until you get laid off, and then it's gone. So it's not actually that steady. But at the same time, it is something that you kind of have to rethink how you're going to do this. So this is just kind of like a little preview. Troy, do you want to just give a quick overview of what we've been up to the last year as far as traveling? The last, year and a half?
Yeah. So as we transitioned, I guess, away from the 9-to-5 job, it did provide us a lot of flexibility and made us realize how much more important the experiences that we were having in life were than the money that we're making in life. And so we took our three youngest kids and went and hiked the Arizona Trail. And that took us 3 months to do. And it was a 800-mile trail that we were able to spend that time with our kids, build some amazing memories that we had with our kids in order to basically make the lifestyle that we wanted to make. And so we hiked the Arizona Trail, and then from there we got an RV and we traveled around the country and visited a lot of places that we've been wanting to visit our whole lives, and visited people along the way that we had connected with over time and through our networking connections through real estate, and got to see all the fun things that they are doing and that they're working on and what they're doing with their money that they're making, and their as they are moving into the passive income, transitioning into the passive income lifestyle. So the one thing that I've learned in observing everybody is that a lot of times passive income is kind of a misnomer that makes it sound like you just make money from nothing. And that's never actually how it is. You make money by making smart investments and taking advantage of the interest rates and the interest in general to multiply your wealth. And not only that, is that the money that you do create, deciding what you want to do with that and how you want to change the world based on that new lifestyle that you're creating. We are really focused on doing philanthropy work and taking the opportunity to help others and educate others on what it means to have passive income, and to our main goal is trying to help everybody understand that they need to have another option. They need to have another source of income at the very least, to help, extend that safety over their life and over their families. And so people all over the world, or all over the US that we had met, are doing that in different ways. Some of them are retired and they're living off this passive income, and they're helping people on the Arizona Trail by bringing them food and helping them out when they're in need, and staying in contact with those that are hiking on the trail. Others are starting businesses where they start nonprofits, and they're helping people over in Africa find jobs all over the world through virtual assistants, and which is one of the things that our partners here at Capital Rise do as well. Is they have a philanthropy business that they do that also helps them to achieve that goal of just helping out others in the world. And that's what we really believe, is that wealth is not meant to be hoarded and hid and spent on extravagant lifestyles. It's meant to help others and help this world to become a better place in general. And that's been our focus with everything that we've done since we've retired and since we've been working in real estate. And we've met some amazing people, and we've built an amazing team that has allowed us to be able to help other people achieve their goals of passive income and living the lifestyles that they want to. And that's a real definition of passive income, is living the lifestyle that you want to live. That instead of relying on somebody else that's telling you what to do, is that you're making your own life, you're achieving your own goals, and you're bringing happiness to yourself and to your family through that through passive income.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. It's having the, I don't want to use the word control, because there's an illusion of control sometimes when you're a passive
Ability.
Yeah, or even a business owner, there's an illusion of control sometimes. It's because you need customers and you need, people to rent your house and all that. So I don't like the word control. It's more like accepting responsibility for the areas where you can influence that, and accepting the increased responsibility and risk that goes along with that, to the trade-off, which is exactly what you just described. So we're going to be going into a lot more details actually on the structure of the employee versus entrepreneur to investor, some of the legal and tax considerations to doing some of these things, and kind of figuring out like which quadrant you're in an upcoming webinar that you can jump to, the risecapitalinvestments.co/webinar. You can sign up for that. We're going to be going again into more details. I focused on this mostly today, cash flow versus equity versus tax planning, like our income and how to solve those kind of issues. But we're going to be going even more into some of it, especially the tax planning side of it, in our upcoming webinar. And then the travel versus home-based versus stationary, that we could probably do a whole webinar just on its own, like just how to plan out the logistics of traveling with your family and the lifestyle shift that requires, and just how to do all that. But we'll be going more into choosing, like, how can you afford to have a home base? So like how we were able to maintain a house while we were out traveling, and the psychological impacts of that on the kids and on us. So right now we're choosing to be stationary back at that home base. And so the decision and thought making process that you go through to be able to figure out, like, how are you going to afford this? How are you going to do the logistics? How are you going to decide based on psychology, like what you want, what the kids want, and especially getting everybody on the same page, because on a lot of things we can be on a different page, right? But where you live as a family is not one of them. A married couple with minor children, you all have to be on the same page where you're gonna live and where you're gonna travel. So we have some big things coming up as far as the travel and the home base and the stationary stuff coming up that we'll again share at the webinar that's coming up in 2 weeks. So we do an event every other Thursday. So we've got a lunch and learn today, and then in 2 weeks we'll do an evening. We got basically like relax with Rise, just super chill. And then the webinar will get a lot more nitty gritty into some of the technical details. And that's like Rise After Hours, that you can join us there once a month. And if you guys like those webinars, like, let us know, because we've recently been thinking about returning back up to having 2 evening webinars a month, and 2 of these a month instead of just alternating weeks. So if you are enjoying this, like, let us know what topics that you want to have us discuss, how often you like it, if you prefer it during the day or the evening. Like, all of that feedback is really useful as we're planning our events. And so, because we want to bring a lot of value to you as potential investors, and bring a lot of value to you as part of our network, because that's how we get stuff done, is introducing people to other people and making those connections. And so putting this out there that's going to help people figure out some of those lifestyle decisions and choices, it's our way of connecting with you and getting your feedback and knowing like what's most valuable, because that network, like I said, drives everything. So we want to be a valuable part of your network. So thank you for stopping in with us today and hearing what we had to talk about, our experiences over the last year and a half. It's been almost 2 years since Troy left his job involuntarily, and what life has looked like for us, and some of the cool things that are coming up on the horizon, both with the business and personally. So hope to see you there at that webinar. And thank you so much for joining us today.
All right. Thanks.
See you in 2 weeks.
Bye, Emma.
Bye, Troy. Bye, everyone.